Welcome. It's December 17th. Merry Christmas. You're here at the Murfreesboro City Council, and Councilmember Sean Wright has our prayer and our pledge.
Thanks, sir. Since it's a week before Christmas, I wanted to have my pastor from First United Methodist give us the prayer, Reverend Dr. Drew Shelley.
Will you pray with me? Lord, we give you thanks for this day now finished and for the evening unfolding before us. We thank you for our city, for our sisters and brothers who make this such a wonderful place to live. We thank you for those born and raised in this place and for others like me who got here just as fast as we could. Lord, the days are heavy in this long season of pandemic. We pray for our sick, for our dead, for our grieving neighbors. We pray for our folks on the front line risking life and health to care for the rest of us. Protect them from this virus and from those other viruses that float around like hate and anger and bitterness. Help the rest of us lay down our pride and many opinions so that we can be part of the solution. We pray for our educators. My goodness, they are nearing a much-needed winter break. Give them rest, restore their souls, and refresh their creativity as they figure out how to teach our children in such a bizarre time. It would be so easy for them to give up and just go home, but they have not. They are still at it, and we thank you for their courage and their determination. We pray for these men and women at the table before us who lead us in these difficult times. What a gift it is to live in a place where the leading of the people is done by the people, for all the people. We thank you for these who give themselves so fully to this work. Grant them wisdom to see beyond the urgent. Grant them compassion that always holds in mind those brothers and sisters who suffer and struggle in our city. And above all else, grant them a spirit of cooperation and hope, which seeks what is truly best for all the people. We pray your blessing on Shane, Madeline, Rick, Ronnie, Bill, Kurt, and Sean, on Craig, Gary, Kathy, Mike, Melissa. Fill them with wisdom, integrity, and love with its sleeves rolled up, ready for work. Lord, we look forward to the promise of Christmas. We need that light of Jesus now more than ever. Make it shine, and use us to do so. In the name of Jesus, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Doctor, thank you so much. All right, you have your consent agenda in front of you.
No questions, move we approve.
Second. Motion is second. Ms. Wright, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Scales Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade is not here. Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye, and I do need to mention, as I get reminded as we vote by Zoom, we have Vice Mayor Scales Harris is attending by Zoom. We have Councilmember Ronnie Martin is participating by Zoom. I think we have our City Attorney Adam Tucker is participating by Zoom. Am I missing anyone else that's participating by Zoom? All right, they're doing that in authorization of Executive Order 54 by the Governor of the state of Tennessee that's allowing during this pandemic us to have virtual meetings for those who cannot attend. All right, moving forward with that, we have approval of our minutes from the April and the May meetings.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Wright, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Scales Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Mr. Huddleston, I want to ask you, I think you have someone that we want to introduce And I'll give before Mr. Huddleston comes up, we do have a new individual that has moved from a part-time. She originally started with the Parks and Recreation Department part-time, and she started on Monday, and she's now with Community Development. She's the administrative assistant. She graduated from Oakland and also graduated from MTSU. Mr. Huddleston.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'd like to introduce to the Mayor and Council and our folks here in the audience, Imani Lewis. Imani is Oakland graduate and then graduated in May from MTSU with a degree in psychology. We were fortunate to find her hanging out at the Parks and Rec Department part-time, and we're able to upgrade her to a full-time position, and we're glad to have her on board.
Imani, congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Thank you for joining us. All right, we'll now move into land use matters. We have an item to rezone approximately 10.7 acres located at the northeast corner of New Salem Highway and Warrior Drive. Mr. Blomley.
Good evening, Mayor
Mr. Blomley, I want to give you condolences that as an Auburn follower that you no longer have a football coach, but he's getting paid $21 million to be able to go home. So congratulations on that.
It's nice work if you could find it.
Yeah.
War Eagle.
Yeah, it's a rough season.
We don't have that in our contract here at City Council, so I can tell you that. Yeah. All right, Mr. Blomley.
All right, thanks, Mayor McFarland, and good evening, Mayor and members of council. Our first public hearing tonight is for rezoning for the Uri property, which is now actually owned by investment partners. It's 10.7 acres located at the northeast corner of New Salem Highway and Warrior Drive. It's zoned RS15, and they are requesting to rezone it to commercial highway. There's an existing single-family residence on the property. Investment partners who have done numerous other developments here in Murfreesboro are looking to develop some interstate-oriented commercial uses, specifically food service uses on the property. They've submitted us a concept plan, but just for informational purposes, but they've indicated that their intention is to develop kind of a food service corridor on that property. Property was actually included as additional study area in a rezoning to commercial highway about 6 or 7 years ago, but the Uri family actually asked to have their property removed from that rezoning back 6 or 7 years ago. But now we're back for the same rezoning to commercial highway. Directly across the street is commercial highway zone land, which is developed with a car wash, a commercial center, a gas station, a Dunkin' Donuts. There's Riverwatch Apartments further to the south. Directly to the east of the subject property is also zoned commercial highway, and we've had a plan approved for a self-storage development on that property. Across New Salem Highway is zoned light industrial. It's the West Point development, which is the development where Costco has been approved to begin development. With that being said, the Planning Commission conducted a public hearing on this matter on November the 4th and recommended its approval to rezone this property to commercial highway at that meeting. I'll be happy to answer any questions regarding this request. Oh, and I neglected to mention the 2035 comprehensive plan recommends that this property develop as general commercial, and the CH zoning district, which is what has been requested, is consistent with the comprehensive plan. Mr. Matt Taylor and Mr. John Harney are here representing investment partners, as well as the actual investment partners themselves are here if you have any questions for them. I don't believe they have any formal presentation. They're just here for questions.
All right, we'll need to hold a public hearing on this rezoning request. Our public hearing rules, if you wish to speak, please come to the podium. You have 3 minutes as an individual, 5 minutes if you're representing a group. If you'll keep all questions directed towards the council, we'll get those answered at the end of the public hearing. Anyone one wishing to speak for or against, please come to the podium. All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and we'll consider on first reading ordinance 20-OZ44.
I got a question for the applicant, I guess, or maybe for Matthew first. This strikes me as a piece of property that's going to be extremely visible. People coming into into Murfreesboro and right there, it's gonna, I guess there's nothing that will be in between the interstate. Does that interstate right away come all the way to the edge of this property, or is it not?
Yes, sir, that's the on-ramp right there.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought. So, have there been any kind of limitations to commercial highway at all that they've put in there? Sometimes we'll back out some of those uses. Has anything been already proposed in here? I couldn't tell from my.
They have not. They're just asking for a bulk commercial highway zoning.
Okay. I'm thinking Church Street, and I don't even know, does a truck stop, is it potentially, could it go there?
Potentially, yes, sir.
The way that Church Street goes out there and the way that traffic flows, I don't know who the applicants are, but if the applicant would talk to me about that, I'd be real interested to know that it was definitely not going to be a truck stop.
Yeah, I think either Matt Taylor or John Harney could come up and address that.
Thank you, Mr. Blomley. Councilman LaLance, Matt Taylor of SEC. We've got no intentions of doing a truck stop here. We don't have any specific tenants. We have talked to a couple of fast foods and a C-store. Nothing, we'd like to do a hotel if that market comes back, but obviously right now that's not realistic. So no truck stops here.
Will you make that a part of it? Would you be willing to make it a part? And look, I'm.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay,
we could do that.
You just think, I'm just thinking about the South Church Street, and it's it's awful the way people come off there and the trucks cover up the lanes and all that kind of stuff. I just can't imagine doing that again right here. It just seems like it'd be a bad mistake. So I appreciate that. Yep.
Yes, sir.
That's the only question I've got.
All right. Any other questions?
There are no more. I'll move for approval.
Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Wright, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. All right, we'll now move to rezoning approximately 13.1 acres located along West Thompson Lane, and this is west of North Borough Court.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just to follow up on that last, we'll work with the applicant before second and final reading on addressing that.
I need to make that in the motion anywhere, do you think?
We still have it coming up on second reading, so we should be good by then.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our last public hearing tonight is for a rezoning located on the north side of West Thompson Lane. It's in the area in the purple color on the map before you. It's 13.1 acres. It is currently zoned RS15, and the request is to rezone it to PRD, Planned Residential District, for a total of 74 dwelling units. That would be 28 single-family detached homes on individual lots of record. The lot sizes would be around 6,000 square feet, or a minimum of 6,000 square feet, which would be the equivalent of like an RS6 zone, and then additionally 46 single-family attached townhome units. The surrounding uses directly to the east is the Northborough Court subdivision. It's a single-family subdivision zoned RS15. To the north of the subject property is vacant land that's in the unincorporated county, but further to the north is what we commonly refer to as the Jordan Farm, which the city owns and sprays the repurified water. Directly to the west of the subject property is also zoned RS15, and there are some large, deep lots with single-family homes on them. There have been a few rezonings along this corridor, along this portion of West Thompson Lane. You'll see this area is the Tuscany PRD, which is a single-family detached product as a horizontal property regime where everything outside the units is common area, but it is a single-family detached product. Similarly, but on a slightly larger scale, is the General's Landing development, which is comprised of both single-family detached homes and single-family attached homes. That's currently under construction along West Thompson Lane as well. The Murfreesboro 2035 Comprehensive Plan recommends that the property develop as suburban residential, which is defined as single-family detached and attached uses at a density of 2 to 3.54 dwelling units per acre. The density that's proposed with this development is 5.65 dwelling units per acre, which exceeds the recommendations of the Murfreesboro 2035 Comprehensive Plan. A neighborhood meeting was conducted on this request, and there was a lot of good dialogue at that neighborhood meeting with the adjacent neighbors on Northborough Court. I think the applicants were able to do a good job of addressing the concerns of Northborough Court. And at the Planning Commission, as a matter of fact, there was only one person speaking. It was a representative of Northborough Court who indicated that she and her neighbors were happy with the progress that was made and were supportive of the project. They did make a request during that meeting that the single-family homes that back up to Northborough Court would be all brick, and the applicant has agreed to that, and he has made that commitment in his pattern book. He updated his pattern book prior to council to reflect that commitment. Planning Commission conducted a public hearing on this matter on November the 4th and recommends its approval. Mr. Clyde Roundtree is here. I'd like to invite him to the podium. He's got a PowerPoint presentation he'd like to give you. I'll be happy to answer any questions regarding this request either before or after the public hearing.
Thank you, Matthew. Mayor, Commissioners, my name is Clyde Roundtree with Huddleston Steel Engineering. I'm representing Mr. Randy Friedsam and Kelly Wilson with Black Diamond Construction. Also with us tonight is the architect, Brian Oliver, who will be talking to you about the architecture, and Enoch Gerald is an engineer from Huddleston Steel Engineering that would address any questions you may have regarding the site as well. As Matthew mentioned, it's kind of an embedded site right now with the Northborough neighborhood to the east and Tuscany on the other side to the west, and there's some empty lots between there. So with that in mind, the site is generally a flat site. It has the drainage comes from the north to the south and basically ends up on West Thompson Lane, and generally just a flat site. Overall, some of the character of the adjacent neighborhood is it's kind of a ruling character still along West Thompson, but that's changing rapidly, as Matthew mentioned, with the addition of Tuscany and General's Landing. I'd say this development is very consistent with the character of General's Landing, but right now there are single-family lots that would go across along West Thompson Lane. We're right across the street from Northside Baptist Church, and has real good proximity to Siegel High School and middle school. That's the church on top of the corner, and then just the character of the open character right now, West Thompson, on those images. Overall, the site plan just kind of walk you through the components. As was mentioned, the lot drains from north to south, and so that allowed us to put our detention areas towards the front of the development. The good part is that it's green space right along West Thompson, which will kind of keep that rural character. The negative part is that it's detention areas on the front of the development, but the city's come up with some new regulations regarding those detention areas, and we did a lot to make sure they were contoured and not just, rectilinear functional looking detention areas, but actually more of an element of aesthetics. They're not going to hold water, so they're not like they're ponds on the front, but they are designed in such a way that they're landscaped. There's berming between the road and the detention areas, and so it's going to really come across as green space. And it does help recess the development off of West Thompson, which I think is a positive in this regard. As far as the single-family lots, as Matthew mentioned, along the eastern property line, all those are against the Northborough neighborhood. So those are represented in yellow. So they run that whole long line along Northborough. To the very end of the road, towards the northern portion of the site, is the amenity area. That's one portion of the amenity area that has the pavilion and playground with some parking. The other amenity area basically associated with that is also off that roundabout, and that contains a dog park and the mail kiosk. So we're happy that generally speaking, the amenity areas are linked together and will be well used with the development. The dog park is closest to the townhome development because that'd probably be the primary user for the actual dog park itself. As Matthew mentioned, there's a traffic circle, a roundabout per se. We originally had 2 roundabouts in the development along both the access roads. But it was determined that really the only one that was necessary is the primary access to the furthest to the east. And where that's going is that'll be a traffic abatement to any development to the north. So just want to let you know that's why that's there, and we kind of leveraged it for green space, mail kiosks, and for guest parking. We also have single family along the northern portion, single family detached lots. So any future development along that line will have single family up against it. The attached homes are along the secondary access, the second access. As Matthew mentioned, there are 48 of those units with a minimum of 1,000 square feet. The single-family detached homes will be a minimum of 1,600 square feet. And as was mentioned, the overall density is around 5.65 units per acre. One thing that we've always been concerned about, and the city's more and more concerned about, is parking. So all the single-family homes will have 2-car garages with the capability of parking 4 cars in the front yard with a 35-foot front setback. As far as the townhomes are concerned, if they're 2-bedroom, they'll have 1-car garage with potentially 3 cars out front. If they're a 3-bedroom, they'll have 2-car garages with the potential of parking 4 out front. So we wanted to make sure that we address parking as a primary concern that the city has. In addition to the parking that we just mentioned, we also have 16 guest spaces that are dispersed throughout the development, primarily around the amenity area. So I wanted to make sure that we could support the amenity area as well with additional parking. The amenity area consists of a dog park, as mentioned, a playground area and a pavilion, and the mail kiosk is located in that area as well. This exhibit basically talks about some of the easements we had to work through. Drainage was a primary concern that was expressed from the Northborough neighborhood, so we wanted to make sure that we addressed that concern. So anything shown in blue is what we're considering more of a drainage type of easement and where the drainage will flow. As far as the purple, that's really our utility easements. All the utilities will be out front of these homes. And one thing that was asked for, and it's just shown in a hatched line on this exhibit, was we have a 2-acre parcel that's in the middle of this development. That's an interesting piece of property. The owners have asked to purchase that piece of property, but that piece of property is owned by the people that actually sold the property. So the city asked us to make sure that there was some sort of easement for access on that property. It is the developer's intention upon that property being available that they would purchase it and continue this master plan onward with similar types of character. But we did want to make sure that if perchance it doesn't sell anytime soon, there is an access easement that's available for the future onto that piece of property. From a landscape standpoint, the only thing we added differently is that due to the fact that that is an out parcel, for lack of a better term, in this development, we've been asked to put a type A buffer around that. So in the course of construction, there'll be a green wall that they're supposed to be looking at versus just construction traffic. So we need to install the buffer around that out parcel piece of property. There'll be a type A buffer along the Northborough neighborhood and more perimeter planting around the additional property lines, and then there'll be a streetscape program through the main accesses of the development. And as was mentioned, the detention areas are up in the front of the property, so there's a little section that shows how that would be handled. So you'll have your drive access roads, you'll have a walkway, a berm with landscaping and street trees on it, and the detention area will be behind that. So we wanted to make sure to be a real aesthetically pleasing scenario along the main entry drive. In these images, we also show, potential typical signage being some sort of masonry project. Right now, we're anticipating maybe stone. And then we've been asked to kind of create some sort of a streetscape component along West Thompson Lane. And so what we're proposing is a split rail fence as well as enhanced landscaping along West Thompson. So at the end of the day, it still has a little bit of a pastoral character out there, and the fact that the development is so much recessed into the site, we feel like we'll still be able to keep that green space kind of component along West Thompson. At this time, Mr. Brian Oliver is going to talk about the architecture, and as was mentioned by Matthew, we were asked to have all brick buildings along the Northborough property line, and Mr. Friedsam and Mr. Wilson have agreed that that would be fine. The only thing there that would be, those lots have been tagged in the pattern book with like a mark that says these are the properties that's relevant to you. So just want to make sure that, and then just for clarification, and Ryan will talk a little bit more about this, I want to make sure that the primary purpose is to make sure that when they're looking out from Northborough neighborhood, they'd see all brick buildings behind their homes. I want to make sure consistently that that would look good as far as the front facade. So So just for clarification, we are more than willing to do all brick buildings along the Northborough neighborhood, but we do want to make sure that on the fronts, we can do some variations as far as some of the aesthetics. So with that in mind, Mr. Brian Oliver.
Good evening. My name is Brian Oliver. And as Clyde mentioned, this project is a mixture of single-family and, townhomes. We'll get to the townhomes. So here's an option with all brick versus some of these have hardy plank on them. The townhomes have a mixture of brick, cultured stone, hardy board type cementatious with lap siding and board and batten design. And the roofs range from 11 feet up to 30 feet in difference. And you can see the different colors and materials there on the elevations. Our idea is variations on a theme where the townhomes and the single-family homes have a tying theme together. We worked with the staff on this, and I think they were very happy with the overall design. We're happy. Sorry, I didn't know.
Any questions?
I'm sorry, I wasn't sure if Clyde was coming back up. We're happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Any questions? All right. Mr. Roundtree, any questions for Mr. Roundtree? All right, we'll need to conduct a public hearing for this rezoning request. So we have a rezoning request for approximately 13.1 acres. Anyone wishing to speak for or against, please come to the podium. All right, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing, and we'll now consider on first reading ordinance 20 OZ 45. Council members.
I guess I'm just curious if were you at the planning commission when this came through?
I was.
Was there any discussion, about the sewer allocation and kind of, our need to be at 3.8 on average, and
Not that I heard.
why would it be 50% above that number? Why does it need to be, if it doesn't fit in 2035 plan, it doesn't fit in the sewer allocation? Was that any discussed at all at planning commission?
If I remember correctly, there was a few mobile homes currently on the property, so it was actually an improvement over what's there currently.
Was there some discussion about the way that the townhomes looked from the back other than just the brick?
My only concern, and I think taking sewer allocation aside, I'm pretty familiar with what's being built on Thompson Lane, but Mr. Blomley, are there any one-car garage, anything's single-family or townhomes being built on Thompson Lane? I don't think General's Retreat or General's Landing has any one-car, do they? Does it have one car?
I don't recall specifically. Mr. Friedson is saying that there are some one-car garage units.
Okay, I'll be happy to look at that too. That's my only thing, because I don't remember approving any one-cars over there, but.
I don't recall specifically, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Mr. Roundtree, when you get back, what would the number look like if we went to an RS6 on this, or kept it within a PRD and just did something that would be similar to just the single family? It looks like the detached single family portion of this is similar to an RS6. Is that right? I mean,
Correct.
If we went to all RS6, what would that look like on your numbers? We'd go from 74 to, is that going to look like it goes to 55-ish, 50-ish?
I think you just double what you see as far as the single family, so they'd probably go more towards 56 or so.
Just kind of double what's on half of it or whatever. That's what I was looking at too.
Mr. Lance, I did a little quick math. I think you could probably get about 23 more single-family homes in there. So there are 28 now. You'd probably be looking at about, I think I would estimate about 51 single-family homes if they kept that RS6 type
Okay.
lot size.
Yeah, and I want to address Mr. LaLance as far as the sewer allocation. The first step that Mr. Friedsom took was to talk to Valerie to make sure that the density we're proposing was acceptable, because he knew that would be a potential concern. And from my understanding, 7 units per acre is really kind of where we're at on that in this particular area.
Well, that assumes you get all townhomes. I mean, that's assumed it's zoned for townhomes, but it's not. I mean, it's zoned for single-family RS-15.
Right.
Which is not 7, it's less. And 3.8 is what we got to be on average everywhere in town. So if we're going to do everything at 560, what are we doing at 2 to get us at 3.8? I mean, this discussion just keeps coming up over and over and over again. I'm just kind of curious, when are we ever going to get to 3.8 if everything that comes through is at 5.6 and we're arguing for 7? We won't ever get there. I mean, so I mean, it surprises me that the planning commission is not even talking about it if that's not happening. But
Yes,
here we are.
I think our overall, we're at 5.65, and I think what, at least from my understanding, what staff's doing is making sure Valerie's, well aware of the process and making sure she's involved with every step. So she typically gives us some indicator of how her feelings are on that. And I know it's not across the board, that some areas are more prone to have, capacity issues in other areas.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're kind of banking on, as far as I know the development community is. And then what we're also running into, of course, is just the fact that you're trying to maximize the ability to make a profit, but you're also trying to make sure your homes are priced in such a way that there's a possibility of having a diverse, population live within the community. And General's Landing is hitting on both cylinders and doing very well. Mr. Burns can hardly keep him. He's just framing right in front of the sale. So there's no question that there is a demand for the attached home in this particular area based on precedent from General's Landing. But that's why we are where we are right now. So thank you for your thoughts on that.
Here's where I don't dispute that there's a demand for a cheaper home. Okay, I mean, the fact that Rutherford County average home price sales this year are $300,000 and Wilson County is $380,000 tells me we don't have to be at 260 or 280 or whatever. I mean, we like to be, and that's where a good price point is and all that kind of stuff. I get all that, but we're 25% less than Wilson County. We're 50% less than Williamson, 50% less than Davidson. I mean, I just, I'm not sure it's something that just like has to happen just because, I mean, there'd be a lot more demand if you build them for 220 instead of 260, right? I mean, that doesn't mean it's the right thing to do there. So I'm just kind of, again, I'm trying to think about all these things. Yep, Matthew.
I just wanted to clarify what Ms. Smith in the Water Resources Department, what she relayed was that there's capacity in this area. However, I think there's kind of an overarching philosophy by the Water Resources Department of having concerns about any rezoning where there's an increase in density. What she relayed to us is that concern, but that there was capacity in the area and that it would be basically a judgment call as if it would be as to whether or not the rezoning would be good planning to approve it. And so I think I don't want to put words in her mouth, but I think that's what she has relayed to us.
So Rick, are we hung up on what planning or what water resources are telling these developers it's okay that they can build 6 units per, is that what you're?
I guess I'm just trying to figure out, we've kind of, with some previous developments, we've kind of, I think many of us have said, hey, what's happening here to kind of justify a 50% increase above and beyond where we need to be as a community, right? I mean, and so I don't necessarily see that there's some kind, I don't see that there's something that makes this really unique or something like that necessarily. And everybody can have their opinion on how things look or whatever, something like that, right? But I'm just trying to figure out, just big picture, how are we ever going to get there? If this is how, and again, if you come in with just townhomes, look, I'm tickled to death there's some single family detached. Honestly, I'm talking to people about what can we do to incentivize more of that, right? And I don't know, I'm sitting here trying to look at this, and I didn't have any conversations with Clyde prior to tonight, and I apologize for that, but I'm sitting here thinking, is there anything that can be done to make it worthwhile? To have more single family detached, is there anything, if we're gonna do higher density, can we be somewhere in the middle and have something? Out there on the road with that out parcel right there kind of makes it difficult to do anything that's kind of a little more nice for the community kind of thing out on the street front. But I don't know. Those are just my thoughts on it. And it's kind of, there's nothing about this that makes me think we ought to be, eating up capacity, because here's where we get to every time. Whether we look at this piece of property because of the other 3 or 4 pieces of property down the road that are higher than 3.8, and we look at this one and say, well, maybe this one's got to be 2 because the other one's already soaked up 5.65. Eventually, we get to the point where we got over there and the other piece of property where we have to say, sorry, you can't build anything. It's nothing. It's a 0 units per acre piece of property or 3. If we think that we can keep doing this and that doesn't end up being the case in all the other areas of town, we're not studying the math, we're not following the math. So I don't necessarily think Valerie was saying she thought it was a good idea. I think she's probably just saying, do we have capacity? Yeah, we got capacity, but that is taking capacity away from someone else down the road, period. That's all there is to it. So what justifies giving more capacity to them is all I'm kind of trying to get to. If it's up to me, I'd probably try to kick this off a couple weeks, and I'll be glad to try to talk through some things with Clyde or whatever, but I'm just one guy, so y'all kind of know where I'm at on it. But if y'all are ready to rock on, I'm good with that too. It's not a, it's 20 units, so it's always the same thing we get to is it's 20 units this time, it's 20 units the next time, it's 40 units the next time, and then we end up having to be at 0. So we just kind of got to, I think we got to figure out how we're going to deal with it. And I wish it would have happened at Planning Commission a little bit. I wish there was a discussion that we could, how we got here, but it's all right. It's our job too, so.
I would like to find out how many one-car garages in relation to the overall project that General Retreat has. Just from a consistent standpoint, Landmark started out the development of North Thompson when he bought the 10 acres and came through and brought that project, and then Burns started the next project with General's Retreat, and then Caroline, and then we had Goodall that's down now on Thompson. And I want to be consistent on what we're telling the developers when they come through. If we tell them it's okay to have, in this case, 28% of the total overall project is one-car garages, then I'm fine with that. But, if General's Retreat only has 10 one-car garages out of 160 and they're at 6%, then I think we need to look at that, and I appreciate what Mr. Roundtree is given us and the information he's given us, but unfortunately and I feel like I have some experience in this because it's what I do for a living. You know, as the city standpoint, we can't look at economics on, I mean, I looked at the project that we approved out on Veterans Parkway that, you know, really was pretty aggressive on what, going from a single family to a townhome development or a one car. You know, the precipice when they brought this to us was, hey, you know, we just have to have this meeting to make the project work. And, you know, I hate to put it this way, but that's not our responsibility. Our responsibility is to make sure that we get a good project, and you know, that's what we have to look at. And the economic side is just not what we look at. So I really want to make sure that we're being consistent on what we're showing across. In relation, I think the plan book looks good. I think it's a project that will be nice, but I just don't remember the projects that have come through that we have one-car garages on Thompson Lane. Sure.
Mayor McFarland, Mr. Oliver just showed me an image over at General's Landing. It's the 2 out of every 8 are one car, so about 25%. And I think they're primarily, after working with Brian, I think they're the end caps. He usually does 2 bedrooms on the ends and then 3 bedrooms.
I'd rather get the information, all due respect, because I just text the developer just because I know the developer, and he told me they have 10 total in their entire development. And he told me that was the worst sellers that he had in his development. So I'd rather find out what we have. Okay. So I think that's the good thing to find out.
And just for Mr. Lance, as far as the design, we did have a kind of a different overall design as far as single family and the attached. But what we did was we kind of zoned them. That's kind of how it evolved. We did have it to where single family was redistributed differently. And so I think you're going to find is that when there is a multifamily component, it's probably going to be clustered. You know, it's not going to be single family detached. And, you know, so that's kind of what drove the design as far as once we felt like you got to that secondary entrance, it'd have a little bit of a different character. And so that's why we felt like it's justifiable to have all those along that property line. You're obviously going to get a little bit more on there just because of the way they're designed. But if you look at it, it's really about single family detached zone and then the multifamilies. That's what kind of drove the equation for us.
It's just a tough thing on a small piece of property doing the zones. It really doesn't turn out to be zones because they're all, you know, Puckett Station's a great example. You do have zones there. You drive in Puckett Station, you've got townhomes on the front, you've got 6,000, 7,000, or 6,000, 8,000 square foot lots behind that, and then to the right, you've got larger homes and larger lots, and also you've got 10,000 square foot. So that is zoned. It just makes it really hard when you have a smaller piece of property to zone because, you know, you've got a $350,000, $400,000 house that's right across the street from a townhome. And not that there's anything wrong with the townhomes because we need that product. It's just hard to do zoning on a really small piece of property because you're really not zoning. You're really just this side of the street's single family, this side of the street's townhomes. So,
yeah, and I think with this design, what I'm happy about is I think that the folks who live in the townhomes will probably take the secondary entrance, and they probably won't even go through the single family detached. And
it's great to see a roundabout. I mean, that's
we had two.
Yeah, I mean,
and this plan has gone through, just to the developer's credit. I mean, we've gone through a lot of renditions on this.
I don't really have an issue with the project. I want to make sure that the developer knows that. I think it's a good-looking project. I want to make sure that we're being consistent on what we've told other people who've come through, because I hate to approve a project that we have, you know, 28% one-car garages when we've told XYZ developer down the street, hey, no one-car garages in your product. So I want to make sure we're consistent. I don't know what that number is, Matthew, that we've told other people. Typically, when you see a one-car project, this is just my opinion. Whenever we dealt with this on across the street, as you get off of Veterans Parkway, I can't remember what the subdivision was when they came in for rezoning. As you come,
That's what I was thinking of.
when you come off the bridge there to the right of that backs up to Shelton Square, the project that came through. Remember, we had the
Yeah, Shelton Square, Shelton Grove.
Yeah, so we had a big discussion back earlier in the year, it may have been end of last year, where, you know, the sole reason that the developer went from 2-car to 1-car was density. I mean, that's what it boiled down to. And so we just need to make sure, I think, that we're being consistent, because we did not approve that developer to do as many 1-car product as what they were asking, because we said it's too dense. So I just, from my standpoint, want to make sure that we're being consistent on what we tell everyone.
Mayor, let's, it seems that we need to defer this. I move for deferment, and I'd also like to get some clarification about the allocation, what Valerie was talking about, just to have, I mean, I realize we're the gatekeepers, and at some point in time, we're the ones that are going to have to say what's a good, but there needs to be a consistent message that we're giving to the development community, you know, what are we willing to, yeah. And that discussion either needs to happen here, or it needs to happen where we're all on the same page, staff and the council is on the same page, so.
I'll second that, but I want to make this I want to say this too. There's no reason that a developer has to go through this process and get to council.
Exactly.
This is ridiculous.
I'm with it, buddy.
It doesn't make sense. And it just shows that we're not on the same page.
Yeah.
If we got a water and sewer allocation problem, we need to talk about it. We can't just say we're not doing business in Murfreesboro anymore because of water and sewer. We have an issue, and we need to talk about it. So I just want to put that out there, but I second that.
I agree. I'll say this after but Ms. Wright, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Scales Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. And I want to say this too, because I know it's tough. Craig, I'd like to make the recommendation that starting at the first of the year, we need to have a joint meeting with the Planning Commission. And I think it's great that we've got two different bodies with two different opinions, and we do have council members who are on there to make sure that we, you know, that's being represented. But I agree with what Councilman Wade's saying, that, you know, if from a development standpoint, if it was never mentioned about 1-car garages along the way from the Planning Commission, then it sure is tough when you come up to the meeting through the council and the council says, well, whoa, how come this is here? So I think we need to get on a better page with the Planning Commission, and then, you know, try to put what our expectations. I think we've been pretty clear on the sewer allocation that, hey, this is where we are. So we need to either talk about what is a parameter that we would allow, or say that, you know, there needs to be, here are the requirements that we would allow that the sewer allocation could be increased, you know. Then at the same time, it's hard for us as a council, because I think sometimes we're sending a vague message to staff, and they don't necessarily know where we're coming from. So I think that we need to.
Sorry, I thought
Yeah,
you.
it's okay.
One of the things I think will help us a lot on this discussion. I mean, we've had the sewer allocation in place for well over a year now,
Since
right?
December of last year.
Yeah, so about a year now. I think the one thing that we're missing from the equation is just sort of the housing stock piece. So how do we get to 3.8? If we know we're at 7 for townhomes, 9 for multifamily, 2 for commercial, 3.5 for RS-15, whatever. What we haven't done yet is talked about, well, how much of each of those things can we have and end up at 3.8? Right? I mean, that's just math here, right? So if everything that comes in is townhomes, and I'm just going to say straight townhomes just for easy math here, if everything that comes in at townhomes, bulk zone, we're going to be at 7. I mean, it's just simple, right? So I think one thing that would help us in our discussions that would help the development community here is to give an expectation of everything that comes in can't be townhomes, or everything that comes in can't be multifamily, or everything that comes in can't be any one thing. We got to have a mix that is diverse, right? And you know, we have to be cognizant of pricing and all that kind of stuff and demand and whatever, but we got to be cognizant of the future as well. And so I think if we simply get together and get our heads together and kind of talk about, well, what do we want the next 10 years, 5 years to look like to get us close to that 4 number, then all of a sudden we know, hey, if all we've approved is, if 80% of what we've approved is X, we know we can't approve any more of that for the rest of the year in order to try to get to 3.8 or however we want to decide to do that. So it's just, I think that's the part that we're off on, that we need to be working on. So, and sure, yeah, Darren, if you want. I mean, we're just, I think we're just kind of open right now.
Well, just
That's the way it's gone.
the workshop in January, I'm going to have the first annual report of the sewer allocation ordinance. Part of the ordinance was a requirement that we give an annual update of where we are. So I'm working on that feverishly right now. Got multiple people who've been working on it for months, quite honestly. So I'm going to be able to give an idea of what each basin looks like and whether that 3.4 is in every basin or if it's one, there may be less in certain basins.
Perfect.
And we'll be able to come in, and again, we did do this. I'll say townhomes is 11% to get to 3.8 based on the structure we gave. It doesn't need to be over 11%. Multifamily doesn't need to be over 3% to get to the 3.8. I mean, we've got those percentages. Now, my job here is to give you guys the report and to start refining. You know, the first year it's just been, you know, to kind of take up for Valerie. She looks at it and says, yes, we have the capacity to handle these number of units that you bring into.
I understand that.
But she doesn't have the tool, as you all don't have the tool, to see how does that fit into the overall puzzle of the basin moving forward. When we get this allocation report done, that's going to tie into our future land use map. Then you're going to actually have a physical map to try to break down those percentages to show, hey, this is kind of a composite of what you're going to need this basin to look like so that you do meet the number. And then, if you know, there's always the opportunity, if you want to give more, you just have to know you got to counterbalance it somewhere else, or not give it away somewhere else. And those issues will probably, you know, come up at times. But you're right, you don't have the tools you need, but we are working very hard to get. We're going to be getting those to you soon.
That's awesome. And I you know, look, to the developer and the development community, I mean, that's great news for us to be able to give you guys guidance, and so that we don't end up in this position so often. I mean, it's just, trust me when I tell you, I'm just as frustrated about it as you are. So hopefully we'll get that moving along pretty quick and have some clarity.
So we'll work to set up a joint meeting with Planning Commission and Council in January timeframe.
I don't know if the gentleman in the hat back there, if you're the developer, but if you want to come to the podium, you're welcome. I hear you. So
Mayor, City Council, my name's Randy Freedsome. I live 851 East Jefferson Pike. I'm a developer of this project. We've been working on this off and on for 3 years, and we knew the sewer allocation changed last December, and I went to Valerie in January asking her about, we knew we were going to do a pattern book, a mixed use, about like what Brian did. And it's just, we've changed the pattern book 3 or 4 times to meet the needs with Planning Commission. We dealt with them, and also the looks of the buildings and everything. We spent a lot of time and effort. And we go through the Planning Commission. It's just kind of frustrating. That's why I'm just, you know, I'm here. And I talked to Valerie, and we know the sewer allocation is 7 units on a PRD. And I know it's not only, I have a sheet.
That's actually not correct.
I can go back to my office. I have a sheet that she gave me back in.
7 on multifamily.
It's 9, no, it's 7 PRD, 9 RM16.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Anyway, that's where I stand. You know, it's just, we come so far and we're here at the, you know, we're on rounding third base, and then we got to go back to home plate. So that's how I feel about it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. All right, so we've got a deferral. Any other questions or comments? Craig, can we have that set up? It sounds like we're setting it up for January anyway.
Sounded like January would be a good time frame.
Okay. And
Yeah.
can we invite the planning commission to be there for that annual report? I think that'd be great to get
Yeah, I think it makes sense to have,
Yeah.
because it is dovetails with planning so much, that they understand that sewer allocation piece.
Okay. Mr. Core?
This past Monday, we had we went through the rationale with the planning commission. So we gave them a little bit of a preview, just the logic, something that they set up workshops for planning commission. So we had a couple of hours on the sewer allocation. So
Perfect.
we'll be ready.
All right. All right, we'll now move to recommendations for public hearings. Mr. Blomley.
Yes, sir, Mayor McFarland, we just have one public hearing to schedule. We recommend January 21st.
All right, January 21st.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Wright, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
She said aye.
She did, okay. Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Thank you, Mr. Blomley. Hopefully you'll have a coach here before too long. We have Resolution 20R28 for a budget amendment for the schools.
Good evening. I have another easy one. We've received some additional grant money, and which in turn increases our expenditures. So we have 3 budget amendments for those.
No questions, move for approval.
Second.
You're getting off easy, man. All right. Ms. Wright, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Thank you.
Mayor, before you move on in the agenda, just wanted to remind, you should check your emails for the interview process for the next director of schools is starting on January the 11th, that week of January the 11th. And there's opportunities for the council to participate in that interview process. Check your emails for the times, and but every day that week there will be an interview with one of 5 finalists for that director's position. And I know they would really like to have council's participation in that.
All right, we'll move to Middle Tennessee Boulevard change order number 3 and 4.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. The improvements to Middle Tennessee Boulevard were completed in the summer of 2019. During the closeout process, there were several items in dispute between the city and Jarrett Builders. Change order number 3 is a result of the negotiated settlement between both parties, and TDOT has concurred. Change order number 4 revises the contract amount based on the actual quantities used during construction. A copy of change order 4 will be submitted for additional information once it's been received by TDOT. The financial impact of change order number 3 is an increase of $192,187.40, and change order number 4 is an increase of $127,159.64. These change orders, along with the previously approved change orders, revise the contract amount from $15,786,360 to $16,306,206.58, which remains within budget amount of the project. Staff recommends the approval of change order number 3 and 4 with Jarrett Builders. And I'm happy to answer any questions, and Chris Griffith is on the Zoom call.
There are no questions, I move for approval.
Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Wright, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. All right, we have, thank you. We have the, change order for Stones River Greenway Phase 4.
The Stones River Greenway Phase 4 extension is a 2.5-mile long and connects the existing Greenway terminal at Barfield Road and Barfield Crescent Park. Jarrett Builders submitted a low bid and was awarded the contract in June of 2017. During the construction, the actual quantities used varied based on actual field conditions. In addition, the contractor exceeded the contract time and liquid damages were assessed. The financial impact of this change order is a decrease in the contract amount from $6,107,820 to $5,624,152 and is within budget for the project. Staff recommends the final change order with Jarrett Builders. Again, I'm available for any questions.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Wright?
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. All right, we'll move to the, thank you very much. We'll move to the Barfield Crescent Playground replacement.
Good
Mr.
evening,
Williams.
Mayor, members of council. Before you this evening is a contract with Landscape Structures to replace the small playground at Barfield Crescent Park between pavilions 3 and 4. On August 8th, the playground was damaged beyond repair by a vehicle of a patron at Barfield Crescent Park on that day. The contract sum is $50,105 and includes demolition, removal, and then complete replacement. So this contract will be executed through the Sourcewell Purchasing Cooperative, and funds for this replacement are allocated through risk management. I'd be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
I guess I did have a question. So we're paying to fix it? Out of our risk management budget?
So Mr. Tucker, I think, is on the line. He can explain how that was reported and done. So I think it might be best for Mr. Tucker.
I guess I'm just wondering if somebody ran into our playground, why are we fixing it? Is
Yeah,
there's a good reason for it? Just
So we reported that. Yeah, I think so. We worked with them and turned the report over to our risk management and legal side. So
okay, very good, good enough.
Is that a motion?
Is that a motion?
It is.
Second.
Motion and a double second.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Mr. Williams, do you mind staying around to other business? Because I wanted to get you to, I don't have it here, I don't think, but to talk about Mr. Jernigan in the Parks and Recreation Commission. So as we talk about board and commission appointments.
Sure.
Thanks. All right, we'll move to purchase of new garbage carts.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Before you is a motion to purchase new garbage carts for the Solid Waste Department. Approval for the purchase of 2,808 garbage carts from ReRig. Solid Waste Department provides garbage carts to the city residents, and there has been a significant increase in the request for residential carts over the past several months. This is in a state contract, and it will total out to $136,328, and it is budgeted. Available for questions.
So move.
Second.
Motion and a second.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Mr. Gore, engineering design services for Salem Barfield sewer upgrade.
Sir, thank you, Mayor, Council, for the opportunity to present tonight. What you have before you on your screen is a snapshot of the about 2,100 linear feet. It's kind of highlighted there and kind of blinking. It's to propose, we have a bottleneck in the system. We have a 21-inch running into a 15-inch, and so that needs to be upgraded to a 24-inch. We've got a construction cost estimate of just almost $1.1 million. We do have a significant river crossing, and we have received a proposal from ELI, Energy Land Infrastructure, for $83,687, not to exceed. So we would recommend approval for those design services.
Second.
Motion and a second.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. All right, we'll move to the MTSU chiller plant expansion. This is for water and sewer connection.
Mayor, thanks again. Yes, this is a unique situation, and when there's a unique situation on sewer connection fees, we like to come, or water and sewer connection fees, we always like to bring that before the board and council to make sure that staff doesn't get out of our lanes. But in 2019, we checked the water usage. They have 3 existing cooling towers. They are going to add a 4th. And so each cooling tower is equal to 97.2 single-family units for water, but only 16.5 single-family units for sewer. That's due to the significant evaporative loss, which creates that cooling effect. So we are looking for water. It's right at $116,640, and for sewer, $42,202.50, for a total of $158,842.50. We have worked with MTSU staff, and they are agreeable to the connection fees, but we would just recommend to council that be approved for billing.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris?
Aye.
Mr. LaLance?
Aye.
Mr. Martin?
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. We'll now consider a contract with W.K. Dixon to update design standards for stormwater controls. Mr. Gore.
Yes, sir, Mayor. Again, we have several stormwater control measures, or SCMs. Bioretention, water quality, swales, ponds, pervious pavers, pervious concrete. I'm sure you've all been acquainted with those over the past decade or so. You can see this construction project and how those operate. We've did the design manual. I was actually the author of the first design manual that was done back in 2007. So it's 13 years old, and it's in need of some updating. So to update the design criteria and procedures, and incorporating lessons learned statewide and in Murfreesboro. It also to prepare for an upcoming state rule and permit that will address stormwater measures, and to prepare standard or preferred designs and detailed drawings. For example, you can see here, this is an example of building a biocell. Do we require textile fabric or not? Different types of stone, the underdrain or not, depth and design of underdrains. So it's a much more detailed construction procedure and detailed drawings so that all contractors are consistent. Right now, we have a lot of inconsistency during the construction. Also, for construction of porous pavers, do you go through multiple layers of stone, the depth, the size, the cleanliness of the stone, and material specs and strength specs on paver blocks? That's another example. And so this design manual would get into much more detail on the construction of these different SCMs. So we recommend it's a hourly not to exceed $55,000 with W.K. Dixon to help us update that manual.
Move for approval.
Motion.
Second.
Second.
Motion and second. Ms. Wright.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris?
Aye.
Mr. LaLance?
Aye.
Mr. Martin?
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
We have a couple of beer permits.
Yes, sir. We have a new owner for a restaurant at 125 Wendellwood Drive, and that application does still like their building codes inspections, but otherwise it will be ready to permit once those have been met if you approve it tonight. That's the only one we have tonight.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris?
Aye.
Mr. LaLance?
Aye.
Mr. Martin?
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. All right, I'm going to recommend, he sent it in, had a good meeting with a gentleman, Leroy Cunningham. And so, Mr. Williams, you want to talk about a long-time person on your board who has decided he is going to retire?
Sure, Mayor. After about 20 years of service, mostly as the chairperson Dee Jernigan informed me a year ago that this would be his last year on the Parks and Recreation Commission. We're thankful for all of his years of service. We've seen our most significant growth in the park system under his leadership, and has done a great job leading that board. So some of the just big things that he and I talked about, the development of Barfield Park, the greenway system, multiple renovations, and just the expansion as a whole. So we're certainly going to miss him. We appreciate him staying on this year and helping us through uncertain times with COVID and all that we've dealt with that. But we certainly appreciate all that he's done.
So we'll have an application for you to review for Mr. Leroy Cunningham, who is going to, he won't fill the chair position, but he will be taking on a role with the Parks and Recreation Commission. So,
thank you, Mayor.
all right. Any statements that need to be paid?
No, sir.
All right. We have Mr. Huddleston. He has a mandatory referral for property transfers to be proposed for road improvements.
Thank you, Mayor, member of council. We're talking about the River Rock to New Salem Highway connection. I have an image up on the screen that shows that connection from west to east, starting at River Rock Boulevard and then connecting to New Salem Highway near the Rutherford County Detention Center. That's on our major transportation plan, was also an element of the agreement with Costco that we construct a portion of that. The developer of West Point has a potential buyer of a tract and would like for us to, has asked us to coordinate the two projects together to make sure that our design will work with the potential users. And so we have some property transfers and mandatory referrals that the Plan Commission considered yesterday at their meeting. And starting at River Rock Boulevard, there's a section of right-of-way that the developer, Mickey Mitchell, will donate to the city as right-of-way. There's a portion over the greenway that the city would declare right-of-way. And then there's a portion of the right-of-way crossing over to I-24 that would be a part of the buyer's commitment to donate as right-of-way. This will modify somewhat the right-of-way needed to extend Beasy Road in this location, and so the resulting project would result in the right-of-way needed to construct the bridge from River Rock Boulevard here to this approximate touchdown point here, giving us access to River Rock Boulevard. It would also additionally create the right-of-way for a future extension of that roadway over I-24 on the remainder of the track. We ask that you would approve the transfers and authorize the mayor to sign the deeds that would be prepared by our legal department, and then also to execute a contract that would address the construction of this small portion of Beasy Road with the new owner. I should also point out that the city actually would also donate a portion or transfer a portion of property on some city-owned property here to the buyer of this tract that would be used primarily for landscape, perimeter landscaping and buffering between that and the adjacent property. That property was donated to us by the Swanson family. And there's a small amount of it that is at the same elevation, but the majority of it is 10 feet lower as it was used for borrow when the interstate was constructed. I'll be glad to explain this more or answer any questions that you may have.
We're good? Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion second, Ms. Wright.
Vice Mayor, excuse me, Vice Mayor Skels Harris,
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin,
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet,
Aye.
Mr. Wade,
Aye.
Mr. Wright,
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. All right, any other business from staff? Any other business from council? All right, folks, last thing really want to say, had the opportunity to do the Storyteller with series with John Hood this past week, and John's always really good on making you reflect back on not just what's happened in the past, but talk about what's happening in the future. And knowing that we're not going to be able to get back together until after the first of the year, I don't think it would be appropriate to not really let staff know on behalf of the council how much that we appreciate what you've done in 2020. This year has been a extremely tough year, and not just tough for the council and for staff, but we've had to recreate the way that the city does business, and that just doesn't mean from how we collect taxes or how we provide services, but we've really had to do things that none of us ever thought that we would have to do. And our residents have been resilient in everything that we've asked them to do, everything that we've asked them to do on helping the city provide our services. And City TV has been phenomenal on being able to get the word out to our residents, to be able to do things like a virtual Christmas tree lighting, to help our city school staff on how that we've been able to get curriculum to our kids. So 38 different sites that Dr. Gilbert organized to be able to feed kids over 2020. I mean, we've had so much that we have had some challenges, but we've also had some opportunities that I'm proud to be a part of this council and to be a part of this city for what we've done in 2020, and hope and pray that 2021 will be a much healthier and much safer year than we've had so far. But we have a lot to be thankful for. We're in a blessed city, and we can talk about density, and we can talk about speed bumps and all these different things that we have to work on. But in the whole scheme of things of what we've had to deal with in 2020, I just want to tell y'all, job well done on where we are. So with that, Merry Christmas, and let's hope for a much happier new year next year. So be blessed.